welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast. My next guest is recognized by LinkedIn as one of the 15 sales influencers to follow, so make sure you do. She has been featured in NBC and CBS, 40 Under 40, and as a HubSpot Inbound Fellow. She helps B2B clients close millions of dollars in new business through her digital strategies. Please welcome to Scale Your Sales podcast, Liz J Simpson.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it's great to have you here. Now, we're all experiencing challenging times with the pandemic. Perhaps you can give some indication of how you've had to change your business, or the clients that you work with, how they've had to adapt to these new circumstances.
Yes, great question. So I've been focused on digital strategies from the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, which has only been about 7 or 8 years. And what I found when I started with digital transformation was that there were some innovative, forward-thinking companies that wanted to get ahead of it. They saw it as a nicety, a way to get an edge. But now it's been crazy because, of course, companies are seeing that it's a necessity, right? It's mandatory now for them to quickly adjust and adopt digital strategies now that they have business development team members and sales team members who do not have, the luxury of meeting face-to-face anymore. So as far as a change for me, from a strictly business perspective, it has been kind of the paradigm shift that has now created an influx of need for clients. So in some aspects, in spite of the many challenges that we're enduring in these times, it's been a great opportunity for innovation, because individuals who were stuck in the status quo and may not have been as open to new ways of growing business are I find are being a lot more resourceful and creative. So it's been a fun dynamic from that perspective of new ideas. There are no bad ideas. How can we better leverage digital? How can we better build relationships? And so my business has really just been trying to adjust to the demand in spite of all of the lifestyle changes. But it's been an exciting business time, I will say.
It's really interesting what you say, because it's sometimes digital is a hard sell. To the traditional industries, it's a hard sell because, we'll always do what we've always done because we think it's always going to work. And so now we're in a space where it's not working. People are at home. The only way you can get a hold of them, you can't go into the office or meet them at trade shows and things like that. It's actually now it's the reverse, where people are demanding more of those skills and knowledge about how they can access their customers. So it's great that it's just come round for you, really. Certainly when I talk about social selling and help salespeople on that path of social selling, the audience that I love are those traditional salespeople that are probably, a little bit more difficult, don't think it's going to work and all of that. And I love to see that light bulb come on when they've picked up those skills, they've tried it, they've got a response, and they kind of begin to get it.
Absolutely. And, I for most of the industries I've worked with, we've seen the decrease in performance with traditional methods for some time. Just that resistant to change. There's a learning curve, right? So to your point, if you've been accustomed to selling for this, the same way for 10 to 20 years, you'll dip your toe in the water, but some have been really resistant to just jumping in with both feet. And so now has just been, I don't know, lack of a better term, the perfect storm, if you will, that they're being forced to jump in and see results. But similar to you, I get the most excited because for me, the foundations are still the same, right? So if you don't have foundational selling practices, skill set, role playing, buyer psychology, consultative skill set, you're going to struggle regardless of what tactic we use. So I'm always the most excited about sales individuals who have the foundations. They perform well with traditional practices, but digital just gives them, I mean, it just gives them a direct line to their buyer. It gives them ways to build thought leadership. So to your point, when you have the foundations and then you layer on a digital strategy, it only accelerates results.
Absolutely. I mean, buyers have changed in that, you know, the sales process bit, the selling bit is really only 20%. The problem is you don't get the opportunity to show your great sales skills unless you've done the 80%. You know, the journey that your buyers have actually gone on to find you. You've got to be found by your customers. You've got to be credible to your customers in the online world. Otherwise you won't get to the sales bit. So it's kind of understanding that this is not a nice to have anymore. It's essential.
It is, absolutely.
So what practical strategies would you offer your the listeners in order to enable buyers to buy and really build long-term relationships?
Yes, you know, for me, I find that most have not gone deep enough into their positioning strategy. So everything from, you know, what we consider simple questions, but they are the foundations that most skip over, right? So as they say, you want to do common things uncommonly well, right? And so for me, it's going back to your buyer personas, one, being very clear about niching and structuring your buyer persona. So who are my different buyers? What's the problem that we solve? What is the status quo for my buyer? What's the business impact? What are the solutions that we create? What are the jobs to be done? What are the triggering events that create a need for our solution? Like going back to those foundations, because to your point, since we know that over 67% of the buyer's journey is done digitally, they're looking for messaging that resonates with them in their time of need. So that means we need to go back, marketing and sales need to be aligned, and we need to look at, are we doing voice of the customer interviews? Are we doing client validation interviews? So that we are literally using the language that they use, that they articulate, that they're searching in their time of need, and we're making sure that our digital footprint mirrors that. So our messaging on LinkedIn, because we know LinkedIn is one of the top 5 indexing sites. So regardless of if someone searches you, your LinkedIn profile is going to be one of the top results. Making sure your website mirrors that messaging, you know, your white papers, your sales assets. So starting there, because to your point, the buyer self-educates, they control the majority of the buying process. So we have to make sure that how we show up digitally mirrors what they're looking for in their time of need. And typically when I'm working with salespeople, you know, the tactics are a dime a dozen, right? You know, it's like a recipe, right? You'll get the result eventually. So you can do LinkedIn messaging, you could do email prospecting, you can do face-to-face. My agency for years, we were done for you prospecting. So I've done everything from mastering cold contact campaigns, LinkedIn messaging campaigns. Many different tactics will work. However, what's tried and true is whoever understands their buyer the best, whoever has the best messaging for their buyer that resonates, those are the individuals who typically see accelerated results. So I think it's going back there and really putting yourself in the shoes of the buyer, making sure, you know, if you have sales teams, having your buyers come, doing interviews with them. I think that's the pertinent piece. Then if I were to say a second piece of that is then make sure your digital presence reflects that.
That's an excellent strategy, because I think sometimes people forget those things. They may not, they know they haven't got the right messaging, but there seems to be a bit of a disconnect as to check what is the right message. Pick up the phone. Who are your favorite clients? Who are the ones you've worked with for years that love you? Interview them, record what they say, use their language. It's not rocket science, but why is it, you know, for some reason you have these marketing departments that are kind of sitting there thinking and writing, but you've got these great customers that love you, that have all the information. You know, it's crazy, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. And I think it's a part of humility. When I'm coaching clients, what happens is, for salespeople, um, when we've reached a level of success, sometimes there's a bit of ego, right, that comes with that. And I find for some people, it's just being humble enough to ask questions. And what I found as a consultant, a benefit when I'm going into new industries is I'm asking what some may consider as simple, obvious questions. But then the competitive advantage comes because I'm asking simple questions most aren't. I'm sometimes getting obvious solutions that most haven't taken the time to ask the questions of, right? And so, but it's having the humility to say, I'm going to ask a question because I'm curious and I want to hear you talk. And I'm not concerned about how I sound asking the question. I'm more concerned about understanding you, right? And coming together with the solution. So I do agree that that's a big step that we tend to skip.
And as soon as I think you're absolutely right. As soon as customers really know that you're trying to understand them, it's all about them, then you've got them, really. I remember when I worked in customer experience and we did experience interviews for large companies, because it's sometimes really difficult for them even to hear what their customers are saying because they've got all these preconceived ideas. So we set up a customer journey, and we got these engineers and all people from different departments that were designing this new portal to sit with their customers. So if the customer sat in the bedroom or if the customer sat in the office, whatever, they sat with them, and they had to go on a journey. And they couldn't say anything, because if you get an engineer that's designed a particular journey or way of using a product and whatever, they're desperate to say, oh no, don't do it this way. This is the way I've designed it. Customers will always find the shortcuts. They'll always find the better way, the quickest, the fastest way. They are your best. This is what I learned. They're your best designers. They're best communicators. They really understand their problem really well. So why not use them as your key resource? It's crazy.
I love that story. That fits so well. Yes, absolutely.
So, I'm going to change it up a little bit, because we're two Black women here. So let's talk about the elephant in that room. What's your experience, your view on diversity in sales, in B2B sales, or just generally, if you've got an experience you would like to share? Do you think that we're moving far enough? Obviously, this is quite topical with Black Lives Matters and all the things that have happened, not only in the UK, but in the US as well. So what's your view?
Yeah, I applaud and I am inspired by the leaders who are striving to make sales more diverse and more inclusive. We all have our own experiences. In my experience in my corporate career, I was most of the times the only. And not only am I a Black woman, but I'm a Black woman whose melanin is popping, which means I've always looked younger than my age. So I've always looked young. And I've always been cognizant of the fact that most of those around me did not look like me. They did not share my map of the world. And I shared this story on Cynthia Barnes' event. She's the founder of the Women in Sales organization, the National Association of Women Sales Professionals. And the interesting dynamic for those of us in sales is that our job is to connect with our buyer and to bring in revenue. And so I've always felt like I've been wedged in the middle, because when I've had situations with prospective buyers that might have been discriminatory or, harassment, things of that nature, there's always been this double-edged sword of, if I bring that up and if I ring this bell, will they think that I'm no longer competent to serve the buyer? And so there's always been this double-edged sword of, I felt like, sheltered from HR, because if I speak too much about my buyers' challenges, then that means I can't convert buyers. And so it's been an interesting dynamic. And so for me, needing sales, being in somewhat survival mode and not knowing that I really had options, I really spent the majority of my career assimilating. right? Learning how to play the game, learning how to fit in, learning how to assimilate. And so I am so inspired because now I see an increase. For instance, you know, when I look at tech sales and I see so many individuals of different ethnicities, younger individuals of different ethnicities in tech sales, and they're making great salaries. That really excites me. I'm bolder now because I'm an entrepreneur. But so when I look at individuals in corporate, I'm like, wow, I'm so inspired because I didn't have that courage. I was trying to climb the rung. And now that I'm an entrepreneur, now I wear the hoops and the bold looks, and I can be, I feel more comfortable being authentic. But I'm excited. I think we're moving forward in a way where I see individuals rallying for the ability to bring their full self to the workforce. I'm excited by the fact that here in the US, we know the decision makers in the US are becoming increasingly more diverse, as well as increasingly women, which the majority of my sales career I was selling to older white men. And there were a lot of cultural dynamics that I couldn't relate to. So I'm optimistic. Definitely black and white contrasts of today versus what I saw coming up in my sales career.
Which is good. I mean, that's kind of positive, positive news. And I kind of relate to a lot of what you say about the kind of double-edged sword, really. But I do think there's a long way still to go, and hopefully the leaders. Do you just get the feeling that there's a lot of talk? I want to see action. I want to see real change, and it's not going to happen overnight. It needs to be a continuous and assertive effort. And I'm kind of, yeah, well, okay, let's wait and see. There's a lot of good things that have been said. You know, let's see the action and the results on it. Is it measured, and yeah, is it true? So yeah, I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful, and I know that there are going to be a lot of sacrifices made by those who strive for change, right? And being vocal, they're going to pay the cost for others to come ahead of them. And I am inspired by their courage. The mission that drives me right now, I don't know if we'll talk about this, is I have a movement called the Big Money Movement that is focused on shattering the revenue disparity facing women entrepreneurs. I was going
to ask you about that, so I'm glad you brought it up. Tell us more.
But I'll just connect and explain why, because I became disillusioned for a while by the speed with which change was happening. And so as I looked at economies and I understood, particularly in the US, how small businesses drive economies, I saw that women-owned businesses average 67% less revenue than male-owned firms. When you look at the disparity for women who own businesses, like Black women in the US average about $24,000 a year versus white women-owned businesses average over $211,000 per year. And so if we level just the parity within women-owned businesses, that creates trillions of dollars in the US economy, and it creates, you know, hundreds of thousands of jobs. And so when I speak with most women entrepreneurs, there's a lack of a sales skill set, right? There's an aversion to sales. And so from my perspective, there was a quote I heard someone say, and she said, if good people knew how to do good business, the world would be a better place. And so my thought was, if I can empower women of color to grow profitable, scalable businesses, if I can help level the parity for women, then hopefully as we see more diversity in business leadership, we will then by nature see more diverse, diverse, equitable, and inclusive work culture. So that's kind of, I've kind of gone, I steered to the left a little bit to focus on that, because I desperately feel that needs to happen. I believe that if we empower these women entrepreneurs, they will have the overflow to create social change and to create jobs for their communities.
I completely agree with you. I mean, I think that sales is a fundamental skill, and that's not being in the sales role. That's right. Whether it's a negotiation, isn't it? And you know, you're negotiating all the time, whether you're buying something in a shop, whether you're speaking to a family member. it's negotiation, and we're having to do, and we really need to learn these skills from a young age, and we can then take it into all the different avenues of our life. But sales has been one of those traditional industries that's really been emasculated, in that they talk about crushing and hunter and all of these things that really have, for whatever reason, have not been inviting to women. And so that is allowed this message to continue. So when women are in business, they think, well, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be crushing, and I don't want to be hunting, and that's not me. And I think language is so important. If we start to change that language and really understand more now than ever what sales is, it's simply negotiating. And women are negotiating. They're great negotiators. They're having to do that all the time. And they're great at providing service. And that's what sales is all about. If we start to change the language, then I think that it won't be, well, I don't want to sell. I don't know how to sell, because I don't want to do it in that way, and I don't know any other way of doing it. Now, empathy, building relationships, all those things have come to the fore. So I'm hoping that, that will certainly change. And I think what you're doing is incredible, recognizing that there is this key skill, but I think language is one of the barriers to it.
I could not agree more. That's what I communicate when I'm speaking to women, is that if there was ever a time that your natural skill set was more paramount in sales, it's now. Because now, as they're self-educating, now that they can empower themselves, now that buyers can empower themselves and self-educate, what they're looking at, and studies show that one of the top things an executive buyer is looking for is specialized expertise, consultative skill sets, advisory, right? EQ, empathy, those things that you talked about. And those tend to be skill sets, right? A bit of bias, but studies find traditionally are found more in a women's skill set. And so those are our natural strengths. And I think as we focus on, to your point, the basics done well still outperform. Listening, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, empathy, having the emotional intelligence. Where I see we have the opportunity to grow when I'm working with most women are two areas: executive presence and business acumen. Because what happens is negotiation always comes from understanding value. So you have to understand the business impact of what you do, both the tangible and intangible outcomes. And typically and this is salespeople in general, but with women, because we have an aversion to sales, the power of being in a sales role is you understand the business model of a business, you understand where revenue comes from, you understand where clients come from. So you essentially are the engine of a business, right? And so as salespeople, oftentimes we don't get credit for touching every division and understanding how a business flows. And so the challenge with many women having an aversion to sales is that we miss the profit, which is what drives the business, and understanding where that profit comes from in the clients. And so I found the greatest opportunity has been helping to understand the business impact, the business value that you bring, how it impacts business as usual for your clients, and then taking up space and being comfortable with executive presence and being confident.
Liz, I could talk to you all day. Wish I had all day. I'm going to have to get you on again next year, I think, because, literally in what you've said, there was about 5 different things that I could kind of pick up and unfortunately, time is against us. But I do want to ask you, if you're on a desert island on your own, what's the one thing you take with you?
An airplane to get off. I gotta move around in the world.
I need to be free. Okay. So who is your hero or shiro?
My mother.
Yeah?
My mother.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. My mother grew up And my mother grew up in the Jim Crow, Mississippi South. She lost her mother by age 2 and her father by age 9 due to racism. She was raised by her grandparents and endured tremendous racism and discrimination. And my father tells the story of how she rode her bike to get her college degree and how she had marks on her back from riding her bike for miles to get her degree. And she just is fearless, courageous, strong, bold, and yet one of the most generous, loving individuals. Her circumstances never created a barrier where she could not love and listen and be generous. And I clearly was raised by a woman who wished she had her mother, because she gave me all of the mothering she could. And so everything that I am comes from her. So yeah, she's my shero.
Wow, that really kind of touched your heart. What a woman. I want to meet her. I want to adopt her. Oh, wow. What a great role model to have. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me on to be a part of your show and being a part of your audience. I really appreciate it. Just that means a lot.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. So how can listeners get hold of you, Liz?
Yes, LinkedIn. You should be on LinkedIn. So join me on LinkedIn. You can find me at Liz J Simpson, and let me know you came from the show so that I can give Danica credit for her incredible show. But yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn, please.
I'm sure they will. Thank you for being a guest on Scale Your Sales podcast, Liz. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.